The plastic and metal in a pair of designer sunglasses costs less than a fast food combo meal to produce. The tag on the display case says $300. Number 1. Ray-Ban. In the 1990s, you could grab Wayfarers at a drugstore for around $30. The brand had gone soft, and Bausch and Lomb wanted out. In 1999, Luxottica bought Ray-Ban outright. The frame didn't change. The acetate and hinges stayed standard. What changed was where you could buy them and what they cost. Luxottica pulled Ray-Ban off drugstore shelves, folded it into its own retail chains, and let the price climb to $160 to $210 a pair. Because Luxottica owns the brand outright, with no licensing fee owed to anyone, every dollar of markup stays in-house. According to the company's own earnings reports, Ray-Ban has outperformed the margins on Chanel and Prada eyewear for years. Brands most people assume sit higher on the luxury ladder. A former LensCrafters executive told a reporter the markup on modern eyewear was close to indefensible. He'd spent decades helping build the system he was criticizing. Number 2. Oakley. The origin story is legitimate. Jim Jannard started the company in his garage in 1975, first making motocross grips, then performance eyewear with proprietary lens coatings and a lightweight material he trademarked as O Matter. By the 2000s, Oakley was one of the few real challengers to Luxottica. That independence didn't sit well. A pricing dispute broke out, and Luxottica pulled every Oakley product from its retail network overnight, including Sunglass Hut and LensCrafters. The stock collapsed, and by 2007, Luxottica bought Oakley for roughly $2.1 billion. Prices climbed steadily after. A pair of Holbrooks now runs $150 to $210, with polycarbonate lenses that resist impact but scratch easily. Outdoor forums are full of people replacing those lenses within a year or two, at $70 to $90 a pop. Over 5 years, real ownership cost can pass $400, a number the extreme sports branding does a good job of burying. Number 3. Prada. Prada doesn't make its own sunglasses. Luxottica does, in the same factories producing a dozen other brands on this list. Prada licenses its name. Luxottica handles everything else, and a royalty flows back for the logo on the temple. Economists who study licensed luxury goods compare it to perfume, where the name on the bottle drives the price and the contents barely differ across brands. A pair retails $280 to $480, on a frame nearly identical to a mid-range Ray-Ban off the same line. You're paying for 4 letters stamped on plastic. Number 4. Versace. Same arrangement. Luxottica licenses the name, builds the frame, adds the Medusa medallion. Retail runs $260 to $520 on standard acetate and metal off the same production lines as everything else in the portfolio. No unique coating, no dedicated factory. Set a pair next to Vogue eyewear, a budget Luxottica label retailing for a third of the price, and the physical differences are minor. The gap is almost entirely the logo and the store it's sold in. Number 5. Gucci. Gucci eyewear runs through Kering Eyewear, the licensing arm of the French luxury group. Kering designs and manufactures Gucci lends the name. A pair retails $320 to $650 on standard acetate, metal, and polycarbonate lenses with nothing proprietary in the optics. What keeps revenue flowing is the seasonal cycle. New temple shapes and colorways roll out yearly, making last year's pair feel dated even though it performs identically. A guy who buys into that cycle can spend thousands over a decade on frames that never actually improved. One marketing professor described eyewear margins as closer to pharmaceutical pricing than fashion pricing, and he didn't mean it as a compliment to either industry. If any of this is useful, that's the whole channel, no sponsors, just where your money actually goes. Subscribing helps more than you'd think. Now the list flips. These next 5 charge real money and the receipts back it up. Number 6. Randolph Engineering. 2 engineers opened a factory in Randolph, Massachusetts in 1973, building frames through a patented multi-step process. In 1978, the U.S. military contracted them to produce the aviator style that became standard issue for American pilots, a contract they still hold. Every frame is hand-assembled from corrosion-resistant alloys, with ground glass lenses instead of polycarbonate, meaning better scratch resistance and clarity at the cost of a bit more weight. Randolph also runs a lifetime repair program out of that same factory. A pair costs $210 to $290 for a frame built to military optical standards, assembled by hand in the U.S., with service included for life. Number 7. Maui Jim. Founded on Maui in 1980 to solve one problem. Standard tinted lenses dulled the color of the coastline while cutting glare. Maui Jim engineered a polarized lens that kills glare while keeping blues and greens saturated instead of washed out. The glass lens line filters high-energy blue light linked to eye strain, and independent reviewers have repeatedly noted less edge distortion than competitors running standard polycarbonate, which matters for anyone driving or outdoors for hours. Pricing runs $220 to $360 on a brand built around optical engineering rather than logo placement. Number 8. Costa Del Mar. Founded in Daytona Beach in 1983 by fishing guides frustrated with glare on open water. Costa's glass lens filters light at the exact wavelength that causes blinding surface reflection, with a polarization rating around 99% and an added layer of blue light filtering on top of standard UV protection. Frames mix nylon, acetate, and sometimes titanium with side vents for airflow. A pair with the glass lens runs $230 to $310, a price built around a specific testable function, which is why it has such a following among people actually on the water for a living. Number 9. Persol. Disclosure first. Luxottica has owned Persol since 1995. So why does it belong here and not next to Prada and Versace? Because unlike the pure licensing deals, Persol still runs its own dedicated factory in Laureano, Italy. Built around a patented flexible hinge from the 1930s using a small steel spring in the temple. Roughly 10 extra manufacturing steps over a standard hinge. Lenses are crystal glass, not molded plastic. A pair of the 649 model, designed in 1957 for Turin tram drivers, runs $260 to $420. Steve McQueen wore Persols for decades on screen, and the brand has documented manufacturing history going back over a century. Luxottica owns it, but the product still earns the price. Number 10. Warby Parker. 4 graduate students founded the company in 2010 on a simple thesis. Eyewear pricing was almost entirely retail markup with no connection to production cost. So they sold direct online and through their own stores and skipped that layer. A pair starts around $100 with prescription lenses included, cellulose acetate frames, stainless steel hinges, and polycarbonate lenses with anti-reflective and scratch-resistant coatings. The build quality doesn't rival Randolph or Persol, but for the price it holds up. Their home try-on program ships 5 frames to your door before you commit, and they now run over 200 stores nationwide. For the price of 1 pair of Versace frames, you could walk out with 4 pairs of Warby Parkers and cash left over. The eyewear industry runs on one bet, that you'll never check what the frame in your hand actually costs to build. Luxottica has reported margins on eyewear that outpace nearly every other consumer category, and more than one former executive from inside that system has said the pricing doesn't hold up to scrutiny. 5 of these brands are selling you a name stamped on cheap plastic. The other 5 are selling you something you can actually verify, a factory you can find, a patent you can look up, a spec sheet that reads like an engineering document. So the real question isn't whether you can afford expensive sunglasses. It's whether the pair you're about to buy is expensive to make, or just expensive to market. Which of these surprised you most, and what are you wearing right now? Drop it in the comments and subscribe if you want more of these.